How much betrayal can a heart endure before it stops hoping altogether? That's not a philosophical musing. It's the kind of question that punches through your chest when you realize the person who promised to stand by you has already turned their back. What do you do when the man who vowed to cherish and protect you is sipping cocktails on a tropical terrace with another woman while you're enduring the most agonizing hours of your life? This wasn't a hypothetical question for Leona Bennett. It was her reality on one side of the world. She was in a stark hospital room, her body breaking under the strain of labor, while on the other side, he was somewhere else entirely. Her millionaire husband, Ethan Cross, was soaking up the Maldives sun with his mistress. He thought his lies were as seamless as the horizon he admired. He was wrong. His paradise was about to erupt. The silence inside their Sydney Harbor penthouse was a living thing. It clung to the sterile, filtered air and hovered over sleek expanses of imported granite and gleaming chrome like a film of dust. Leona, pregnant at 9 months and 6 days, felt the weight of it pressing on her chest as she sat perched on a handcrafted Tasmanian oak sofa. From her spot, she could see all of the harbor, the opera house glowing softly in the dusk light, yachts drifting through the bay like pearls. It was a view that cost 8 figures. A view meant to represent a life fully realized. But today, it made her feel insignificant, alone, a porcelain figure in a life-sized dollhouse. Her husband, Ethan Cross, was packing. He moved through their vast master suite with the same cold, methodical precision he used in billion-dollar negotiations. At 43, Ethan was a tech mogul, the revered CEO of Crosslink Systems. His jawline was chiseled like marble, eyes a slate gray with the glint of a brewing storm, and his magnetism, so potent it could suspend reality. He had sold the world on the dream that his behavioral analytics software was designed for empowerment, not exploitation. And he had sold Leona the fantasy that his frequent last-minute trips were a necessary price for the kingdom they were building. "Just Singapore, Leo," he called out, his voice echoing from the bedroom. He stepped out, buckling his Philippe wristwatch. He wore a Brioni suit that probably cost more than her first car, a final handshake on the Altair deal. "I'll be back before you even have time to miss me." Leona smoothed her hand over the firm dome of her belly, their son tumbling inside her with energetic kicks. "The doctor said any day now, Ethan. He also said no more traveling for you." He crossed the room, knelt down before her, his cologne filling the air between them like a spell. He took her hand, thumb brushing gently over her knuckles. A calculated gesture. "The moment you feel a real contraction, I'm on the first flight back. The jet's already on standby. You have my word." His eyes held sincerity. His expression, a flawless mask of concern. He was good. He was so very good. And she wanted, desperately, to believe him. For 6 years, she had built her world around that belief. She had been the picture-perfect wife, elegant, supportive, polished, and a quiet partner in his unrelenting pursuit of power. She'd dismissed the late hours, the whispered phone calls, the unfamiliar perfume lingering on his shirts. She had chalked it all up to the demands of his world, the cost of living among titans. She had chosen to trust him. But pregnancy had awakened something primitive in her, a sharpened instinct she hadn't known she possessed. She didn't know she possessed it, but right now that instinct was screaming. "Singapore, huh?" Leona asked, her tone casual. "Meeting Mr. Tanaka again?" There was a flicker, so subtle she might have missed it a year ago. But not now. His eyes locked with hers just a beat too long. "It's the same old dance, you know how it goes." Ethan leaned in and gave her a kiss. Brief, dry, perfunctory. "Don't worry, Fiona's on her way over. You won't be alone." He stood, grabbing his leather carry-on. "I'll call you the moment I land. I love you." "I love you too." She whispered it to his back as he walked away. The lie tasted like ash in her mouth. The heavy door of the penthouse clicked shut, and the suffocating silence swept back in. Leona remained on the couch, listening to the hum of Sydney's bustling harbor life far below. Singapore. The Altair deal. It all sounded so plausible. Ethan was a master of plausible deniability. She reached for her laptop on the side table. The cold aluminum stung her palms. Her hands shook slightly as she opened the browser. She wasn't being paranoid. She wasn't a spy, not a jealous wife. She was verifying a detail. She typed the name of the private airline Ethan always used, a trick her journalist sister had once taught her, searching tail numbers. brought up a flight log. The jet registered to Crosslink Systems had filed a flight plan 2 hours ago. Destination? Malé, Maldives. Not Singapore. Maldives. The breath left her lungs in one gutting exhale. Maldives. The word summoned images of overwater villas, couples on paddleboards, honeymooners sipping champagne as the sun dipped into the ocean. It wasn't a boardroom in Singapore. It was paradise for lovers. Her mind whirled, hunting for another possibility, a stopover, a last-minute venue change, some logical explanation. But the lie had been too precise. Mr. Tanaka. The board. Just then, a sharp, searing bolt of pain shot through her lower back, curling around her abdomen like a band of molten iron. She gasped, one hand clutching her belly. This wasn't like the Braxton Hicks contractions she'd grown used to. This was deep, primal. It stole her breath and made the billion-dollar view blur. Another contraction followed, harder, more commanding. Her water hadn't broken, but every nerve in her body screamed. This was it. Fumbling for her phone, her fingers slick with cold sweat, her first instinct was to call Ethan. Tell him to turn the jet around. Their son was coming. But she froze, thumb hovering over his name. He had lied so effortlessly, so completely. If she called him now, what would she get? More lies? Would he claim to be mid-meeting while ocean waves echoed in the background? The betrayal pierced sharper than the contractions, a cold, jagged wedge twisting into her chest. Her phone buzzed. It was her younger sister. Fiona, Leona breathed, exhaling a fragile breath of relief. Hey, just got out of the train station. I'll be up in 5. Did the Prince of Lies jet off to his fake business meeting, okay? Fiona had never liked Ethan. Where others saw a brilliant CEO, she saw a narcissist dressed in charm. Leona had always defended him. He had always accused her sister of being too cynical. But now, he was gone. Fiona, Leona said, her voice cracking. Another contraction tore through her, and she couldn't suppress the low moan. Leo, are you okay? Is it time? I think so, she gasped. And Fiona? He lied. He's not going to Singapore. He's going to the Maldives. There was a beat of silence on the other end of the line. Then Fiona's voice came through, stripped of its usual warmth, cold and sharp as steel. Okay, Leo, don't you worry. I'm almost there. We'll handle this. First, we're getting you to the hospital and having this baby. She paused. Then we're going to burn his kingdom to the ground. The sterile white walls of the St. Clair private birthing suite felt like they were closing in on Leona. Every beep of the fetal monitor, every swish of the nurses' uniforms, everything was magnified into a roar in her ears. The contractions were closer now, relentless waves of pain crashing over her, leaving her gasping and trembling. And through it all, one word repeated in her mind, like a curse: Maldives. 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 Fiona had become a storm of composed fury the moment she entered the penthouse, her face pale with righteous rage. She packed the hospital bag in under 5 minutes, helped Leona to the car, and now stood guard at her bedside, phone in hand, her expression grim. Have you tried calling him again? Leona asked, her voice raspy. 14 times, Fiona said without looking up. Goes straight to voicemail every single time. Sorry, I can't take your call right now. That pre-recorded garbage is faker than he is. She had already texted him a dozen times. Leona's in labor. We're at St. Clair, room 918. Ethan, call me. It's happening now. Where the hell are you? Silence. An hour after they arrived, a single text finally came in. Sent through in-flight Wi-Fi. Delayed, cold, transactional. Just landed. Brutal flight. Meetings all day. Will call when I can. Kiss Leo for me. Hope she's feeling okay. Fiona held up the screen, jaw clenched. He hopes you're feeling okay? The man has the emotional depth of a puddle. Leona felt a fresh wave of nausea, unrelated to the labor. He was still lying. He was in the Maldives and pretending to be in Singapore, gearing up for a day of meetings. The ease of the lie, it was what truly shattered her. This wasn't his first time. It was a routine, polished, rehearsed. He's with someone, Leona whispered, the certainty anchoring deep in her bones. You don't go to the Maldives alone when your wife is about to give birth. You go with someone. Fiona's fingers flew across her screen. As a freelance investigative journalist, she had skills, useful ones. Ones built for navigating the shadowy corridors of digital trails, social media, public records. Let's start with the basics. Who went with him? She muttered. Flight log shows him and the pilots. No other names on the manifest. His assistant, Leona said suddenly. The name caught in her throat. Alyssa Maddox. Alyssa was 27. Sharp blue eyes, waves of honey blonde hair, and ambition that dripped off her like perfume. She had joined Crosslink Systems 3 years ago, climbing her way up to become Ethan's executive assistant. His gatekeeper. His shadow. Leona had always found her unsettling. The way she looked at Ethan, like he was some kind of god, the way her wardrobe had quietly evolved. Designer heels, luxe handbags, luxuries well beyond an assistant's paycheck. Even a generously paid one. Leona had brought it up once. Ethan had laughed. I give her a solid bonus, Leo. She's the best. I need her to look the part. Alyssa Maddox, Fiona repeated, fingers already flying as she searched her across every platform. Let's see what this woman's been up to. Of course she wanted to be seen. Fiona scrolled through a feed of curated perfection, rooftop cocktails in Paddington, gallery openings in Surrey Hills, business-class lounges across continents, a visual diary of a life she couldn't possibly afford. And then she stopped. Her breath caught. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me," she whispered, her voice laced with venom. She turned the phone toward Leona. The most recent post on Alyssa's Instagram story had gone up less than an hour ago. A video, short but devastating. The camera swept across the view from a private infinity pool. The water shimmered in brilliant turquoise, and beyond it, tiered rice paddies spilled down a hillside under a dawn sky streaked in coral and gold. It was unmistakably, iconically, the Maldives. The camera panned from the view to a pair of champagne flutes resting on the edge of the pool. Then, for just a second, it tilted down, revealing 2 pairs of feet in the water. One pair, with immaculate red toenails, unmistakably belonged to Alyssa. The other pair, larger, distinctly male, were just as unmistakably Ethan's. Leona knew those feet like her own. She'd rubbed them countless nights after his long days, but it was the caption that delivered the final, crushing blow. A single word. Paradise. The air in the hospital room froze. Leona stared at the screen, at the image of her husband's feet, tangled with his assistants, in a tropical haven. While she lay here, broken, bleeding, in a hospital bed half a world away, the digital world collided with the physical, and the betrayal was no longer hypothetical. It was fact. A raw, ragged sound tore from Leona's chest, part grief, part rage. She shoved the phone away like it had scalded her. "She wanted you to see it," Fiona said, her voice low and lethal. "This wasn't a mistake, Leo. It's a declaration of war." She posted it on her public story. Not close friends. She tagged the location. She knew someone would find it. She's forcing his hand. Another contraction surged through Leona, more brutal than any before. She cried out, arching her back, welcoming the sharp physical pain, if only to escape the emotional devastation threatening to engulf her. A nurse rushed in, her expression shifting instantly to professional urgency. "Okay, Leona, your blood pressure's spiking. I need you to breathe with me, sweetheart." But Leona couldn't. She was suffocating, drowning in years of lies, in every willful moment of denial, in the image of 2 pairs of feet in a turquoise pool. Her gilded life hadn't just been a cage, it had been a stage, and she'd been the fool. Fiona grabbed her hand, her grip like iron. "Listen to me, Leo. Forget him, he doesn't exist right now. It's just you and your son. That's it, you are going to get through this. You are going to be a mother, and when this is over, we handle him. I promise you." Leona looked into her sister's eyes and saw only one thing: fire. She squeezed back. Hard. A fresh surge of adrenaline pushed back against the pain. Fiona was right. Ethan had made his choice. He had chosen champagne and Alyssa over the birth of his own child. Now it was Leona's turn. She could collapse, or she could fight. "Get me a lawyer," Leona said through gritted teeth as another contraction began to rise. "Not just any lawyer. Get me the best. Get me a shark." Fiona's lips curled into a grim smile. "I know just the one. Victoria Blackwood. She doesn't just get you a divorce, she gets you vengeance." As the doctor came in and announced it was time to push, Leona closed her eyes. She wasn't just pushing to bring her son into the world. She was pushing out the old Leona, the trusting wife, the silent partner. And in her place, a new woman was emerging, one forged in the flames of betrayal and strengthened by a mother's righteous fury. Ethan Cross had no idea what awaited him when he returned home. The first cry of her newborn son pierced through the symphony of beeping monitors and medical chatter. It was the purest sound Leona had ever heard. They placed him on her chest, a tiny, squirming, red-faced miracle. And in that moment, the world shrank to the rhythm of her heartbeat and his. He was here. He was real. He was hers. She named him Jasper after her grandfather, a man of few words, steady hands, and unshakable moral clarity. Everything his father was not. As she held Jasper, Leona felt a seismic shift inside her. The heartbreak hadn't vanished. No, it still throbbed like an open wound. But it was no longer all-consuming. It had been joined and was now rapidly eclipsed by a love so raw and powerful, it felt ancient, immovable, elemental. This tiny, perfect being needed her completely. And yet, as Jasper's tiny fingers curled around her own, another feeling crept in, quiet and unwelcome, doubt, exhaustion that went deeper than her bones. She had imagined this moment so many times, but now that it had come, it was tangled with guilt. Her body was trembling from the effort, her mind foggy. She couldn't even bring herself to try feeding him, unsure if she could. A nurse asked gently if she wanted to attempt breastfeeding. Leona had nodded, then failed. Jasper cried, her hands shook, and she turned away, tears brimming. "It's okay," the nurse said kindly. "We can try again later." But Leona felt the shame rise. What kind of mother couldn't do the first thing her child needed? She had fought so hard to protect this baby, and now that he was here, she felt like she was already failing him. She was his universe, and she would never let that universe be clouded by lies or corruption. Fiona had been her rock, never once letting go of her hand, whispering words of strength, quietly capturing the first breaths of Jasper's life with her phone. Not for Ethan. For Leona. While Leona rested, a nurse helping her settle with the baby, Fiona slipped into the hallway. Her fingers moved quickly over her phone as she made the call that would reshape everything. "Blackwood and Associates," came the voice, crisp, professional. "My name is Fiona Bennett," she said evenly. "I need to speak with Miss Blackwood urgently. It's a personal matter, on behalf of my sister, Leona Bennett. Her husband is Ethan Cross." There was a pause. Names like those opened doors. A soft hold tone played for a few seconds. Then another voice came on, low, commanding, and laced with a calm intensity that hinted at danger. "This is Victoria Blackwood." "Miss Blackwood," Fiona began, her voice steady. "My sister just gave birth to her son. Her husband, Ethan Cross, is currently in the Maldives with his executive assistant, a woman named Alyssa Maddox. He told my sister he was in Singapore on business. We have proof of both the affair and his location. Leona wants to file for divorce." Silence. Fiona could almost hear the gears clicking into place behind that cool, composed voice. Victoria Blackwood, known in elite Sydney legal circles simply as the Shark, was famous for handling the most brutal, high-stakes divorces in the country. She was strategic, merciless, and worth every cent of her astronomical retainer. She didn't just win, she annihilated. "Does he know you're aware of the situation?" Victoria asked. "No, he's completely in the dark," Fiona replied. "He thinks we're still buying the Singapore story, and the proof, time-stamped photos from the mistress's public Instagram account, geotagged in the Maldives, a copy of the jet's flight log, and a string of texts from him lying about his whereabouts, all while my sister was in active labor." "Excellent," Victoria said. The words sliced clean through the line. "Tell your sister to rest. Tell her not to reach out to him under any circumstances. No angry texts, no emotional calls, complete and total silence. He is to hear nothing from her. Am I clear?" "Crystal," Fiona answered. "I'll have a retainer agreement couriered to the hospital within the hour. My team is already pulling every financial record tied to Mr. Cross that we can get our hands on. Let him enjoy his vacation." A pause. "It'll be his last." Meanwhile, in a $5,000 a night private villa at the Mulia Villas Resort in the Maldives, Ethan Cross was indeed enjoying himself. He floated on his back in the infinity pool, a chilled tiger beer sweating in one hand, the tropical sun warming his skin. Alyssa Maddox, clad in a bikini that left little to the imagination, swam up and curled her arms around his neck. "You seem tense," she purred, pressing a kiss to his jawline. "Still thinking about work?" Ethan sighed and pulled her closer. "Just feeling a little guilty, that's all. Leona's due any day." Alyssa rolled her eyes, just enough irritation flashing in her glacial blue eyes to register. "Ethan, we've been over this. You deserve this. You've worked yourself into the ground all year." And what's she done? Hosted a few dinners? Picked out pastel curtains and baby mobiles? Her biggest stress is choosing a crib set. You needed a real break, with someone who actually gets your world. Her voice was honeyed, her words crafted like armor to shield his conscience. Alyssa was ambitious, calculated, and she made him feel like the king he fancied himself to be. Leona, especially during the pregnancy, had changed. She'd gone soft, too focused on the baby, too distant from him and his empire. It was uninspiring. I know, he murmured. It's just bad timing. There's never a perfect time, she replied, voice slipping into a sultry whisper. Isn't it time you stopped feeling guilty? You and we're the real deal. She's just an obligation, a beautiful, expensive obligation, and you've outgrown that. This was the story Alyssa had been crafting for months. She wasn't just a fling, she was his soulmate, his intellectual partner, his mirror. She had cast herself as his savior, the only one who could shoulder the burden of his brilliance. And this trip, it was her orchestration from the beginning. She had made it sound essential. She had even been the one to subtly suggest he tell Leona it was Singapore, a place that sounded more like strategy and less like seduction. And she was the one who posted the Instagram story. It had been a calculated risk. Alyssa knew Ethan's world was insulated, curated, untouchable. He assumed no one in their Sydney social circle would be following his assistant's Instagram. But Alyssa knew better. In the digital age, nothing stayed secret. She had seen the way Fiona looked at her, sharp, unblinking, suspicious. Alyssa was counting on it. She wanted Fiona to be the messenger. Alyssa no longer wanted to be a secret. She wanted to be the next Mrs. Cross. This was her move. I should probably check in, Ethan said, pulling himself out of the pool and reaching for his phone. He saw the string of missed calls and texts from Fiona. A cold jolt shot through him. He opened the last one. Where the hell are you? He muttered aloud. What is it? Alyssa asked, masking her satisfaction behind feigned concern. Leona's in labor. Fiona's been texting for hours. He began pacing the deck, water dripping from his shoulders as panic replaced pleasure. Why didn't I get these before? The signal here is awful, remember? Alyssa said, her tone smooth, already prepared for this moment. You said it yourself. He quickly typed a reply, his hands trembling slightly. He couldn't show up in Sydney with a tan from the Maldives. The story had to hold. Just saw these. My phone was off, in meetings all day. This is incredible news. How is she? Is the baby here? On my way to the airport now. Tell Leo I love her, and I'm coming. He hit send. The lie slid from him like breath. I have to go, he told Alyssa. The jet needs refueling. I'll need a new flight plan back to Sydney, with a stopover first. Somewhere cold, Alyssa suggested, a smirk curling her lips. Anchorage? You could say the Singapore meeting ran long and you had to reroute through Alaska for a second deal. Nobody tans in Anchorage. Ethan looked at her, then laughed, low and impressed. God, you're brilliant. He pulled her in for a kiss, hard and fast. Pack your things. We'll drop you in LA on the way. I need you back at the office holding the line. Erase everything, he added. All the photos, the hotel records. If you used your personal cards, wipe them. Don't worry, Alyssa said, eyes gleaming with victory. By the time you land, it'll be like the Maldives never happened. As Ethan raced to cover his tracks, convinced he was still one step ahead, he didn't know that halfway across the globe, Victoria Blackwood's forensic accounting team was already deep in the records, mapping a tangled web of shell companies and offshore accounts Ethan used to bury his personal expenses, including the 5-figure cost of the luxury Maldivian villa, billed not as a personal trip, but a Sterling Dynamics corporate retreat. The trap was already closing, the shark was circling, and her prey was swimming straight toward her. The Gulfstream G650 began its descent through the clouds above Kingsford Smith Airport, the silhouette of Sydney's skyline sharpening in the window. Ethan Cross straightened his tie and ran a hand through his hair. He felt a pulse of real anticipation. He was going to be a father. He imagined walking into the hospital, flowers in hand, murmuring polished apologies about world-shaking Singapore deals. Leona would be exhausted, but she'd forgive him. She always did. He'd hold his son, and this messy Maldivian chapter would dissolve, sealed between him and Alyssa. He'd spent 2 tense hours on the Anchorage tarmac, placing rushed, backdated business calls to cement his cover. He even bought a cheap airport snow globe as a prop. He was ready. His lie was airtight. As the jet taxied toward the private terminal, he spotted a sleek black Range Rover waiting just beyond the tarmac. Good. His driver was here. Everything was falling into place. The jet door opened, and the crisp Sydney air rushed in. Ethan took a deep breath, stepping into character, the doting husband racing home to his new family. He descended the steps, leather carry-on in hand. But when he reached the tarmac, it wasn't his usual driver who stepped out of the Range Rover. It was a woman he'd never seen before, dressed in a flawlessly tailored gray suit. Her silver hair was cropped into a sharp, elegant bob. Her face was a mask of emotionless precision. Two large, stone-faced men in dark suits stepped out behind her. "Ethan Cross?" the woman asked, her voice calm, yet sharp enough to slice through steel. "Yes," Ethan replied, uncertain. "Who are you?" He glanced around, expecting to see his driver, Leo. "My name is Victoria Blackwood," she said, her gaze locking onto his. "I'm your wife's attorney." The words landed like a punch to the gut. Wife's attorney. It didn't compute. Why would Leona need a lawyer? A lawyer like Victoria Blackwood, whose name he recognized from headlines, always tied to brutal, high-profile divorce and corporate takedown cases. I don't understand," he stammered, his carefully polished composure already beginning to crack. "I think you do," Blackwood said coolly. She gave a slight nod. One of the men stepped forward and held out a thick manila envelope. Ethan stared at it, his hand halfway raised, frozen. "What is this?" "That," Victoria said flatly, "is a summons and complaint for divorce, on the grounds of adultery, among other things. It also includes a temporary restraining order preventing you from accessing or transferring any marital assets, and a court order barring you from entering the Bennett residence. You are not to go home, Mr. Cross, and you are not to contact my client in any way." Adultery. Restraining order. His brain was spinning. How? How could they know? He had covered his tracks. Alyssa had deleted everything. "This is insane," he blurted out, voice shaking. "There's been a mistake. My wife just gave birth. I was in Singapore. On business. I can prove it." He gestured limply with a hand holding the Anchorage snow globe. Victoria's lips curved slightly. The smile didn't reach her eyes. "Ah, yes, Singapore. And the Anchorage stopover was for what exactly? The International Snow Globe Summit?" She took a step closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "Let me spare you the humiliation of perjuring yourself. We have the jet's flight logs. Destination, Male. We have resort receipts from the Mulia Villas charged to a Sterling Dynamics shell company as a team-building retreat. And we have a beautiful high-resolution screenshot from Ms. Maddox's Instagram story, featuring your feet, lounging in the paradise you chose over witnessing the birth of your son." Each sentence hit like a hammer. Precision strikes. The color drained from Ethan's face. He looked past her, eyes darting across the tarmac. And then he saw them. Just beyond the legal boundary of the private runway stood a small cluster of photographers. Long lenses aimed directly at him. One he recognized, a paparazzo from the Australian tabloid circuit. And standing beside them, watching with a calm, vengeful satisfaction, was Fiona. She raised her phone as if toasting him, then turned and walked away. He had walked straight into a flawless ambush. "You can't do this," he whispered. The words sounded pathetic, even to himself. "Leona? She wouldn't." "You fundamentally misunderstood the woman you married, Mr. Cross," Blackwood interrupted, her voice like frost. "You thought she was ornamental. You were wrong. She is the queen, and you've been cast out of the kingdom. The Range Rover will take you to a hotel of your choosing. My associate will accompany you to ensure you don't make any poor decisions. A copy of these documents has also been delivered to the Sterling Dynamics Board of Directors. I suspect your day is about to get significantly worse." She turned without another word and walked toward her vehicle. One of the large men opened the rear door, giving Ethan a look that made it clear this wasn't a request. Numbly, he slid into the leather seat. The manila envelope in his lap felt like it weighed 100 pounds. His hands trembled as he peeled it open. The legal text blurred before his eyes, but the message was unmistakable. Irreconcilable differences, extreme cruelty, adultery. Attached were the exhibits. Exhibit A, a printout of the flight manifest to Male. Exhibit B, a copy of the Mulia resort bill. Exhibit C, a crystal-clear, full-color photo of his and Alyssa's feet in the infinity pool. The caption beneath, "Paradise, mocking, final." The car rolled away from the terminal, leaving his private jet behind, gleaming and useless, like a monument to hubris. As they hit the highway, Ethan's phone exploded with notifications. The Sydney Morning Herald, the Australian Financial Review, Daily Mail Australia. The headlines cut deeper than any court order. Tech titan Ethan Kross served divorce on tarmac amid cheating allegations. Sterling Dynamics CEO under fire after missing son's birth for Maldives getaway. Inside the Kross collapse, lies, luxury, and betrayal. He had flown home believing he was a king returning to his castle, but the locks had been changed. The gate was shut. The kingdom, burning. He wasn't a king. He was just a man in the backseat of a black car clutching a cheap snow globe from Anchorage, caught. Finally. Completely. The fallout was swift and nuclear. The story spread like wildfire, fueled by Fiona's anonymous, perfectly timed tips and Victoria Blackwood's masterful orchestration. It was too perfect a scandal to ignore. The billionaire, the pregnant wife, the tropical betrayal, with a junior assistant. It was morality theater for the digital age, and Ethan Kross was cast as the villain no one could forgive. The board of directors at Sterling Dynamics, cold, calculating, profit-obsessed, convened an emergency meeting. This wasn't just embarrassing. It was dangerous. Victoria had made sure they saw the Maldivian villa expense as it truly was, corporate fraud. The misuse of company funds, coupled with the catastrophic PR crisis, was a breach of fiduciary duty. Stock prices crashed, 20% in just 2 days. By week's end, Ethan Kross had been forced to take an indefinite leave of absence from the company he founded. He was locked out of his own empire. Alyssa Maddox vanished, fired without ceremony, named in the divorce filings, blacklisted. She became a ghost. The dream of becoming Mrs. Kross had died in a blaze. She had struck the match, thinking it would light her future. Instead, it incinerated her. Her social media accounts disappeared. Her name erased. She was gone. Her 15 minutes of infamy over, Ethan holed up in a suite at the Caraway Hotel, tried to push back. He assembled a legal war room, hardened litigators with reputations as cold and cutthroat as Victoria Blackwood's. Their strategy, discredit Leona, paint her as a bitter gold digger chasing headlines and money, but it collapsed almost immediately. Victoria was always 5 steps ahead. The case hinged on the prenuptial agreement, thought to be bulletproof. It promised Leona a generous, but not empire-shattering settlement. But Victoria had unearthed a clause, a little-known fidelity stipulation, buried deep in the contract, added ironically by Ethan's own overconfident legal team as a mere formality. It stated that, should adultery lead to public scandal and reputational damage, the financial caps of the prenup would be void. Ethan had signed it without reading, without thinking, without ever believing he could be caught. It was the ultimate Trojan horse. His arrogance, written in legal ink, was the blade Victoria would use to gut him. Faced with a prolonged, public, and humiliating trial he was certain to lose, Ethan had no choice but to settle. It was one of the largest divorce settlements in Australian history. Leona Bennett was no longer just a tech mogul's wife. She was, in her own right, extraordinarily wealthy. But the money wasn't the point, not for her. It was about justice. It was about security, for Jasper. While the courtroom battles raged in headlines and boardrooms, Leona's world had grown smaller and infinitely more meaningful. Her universe became the quiet rhythm of the penthouse she'd been awarded by the court and the sweet scent of her baby's skin. It was the weight of Jasper sleeping on her chest, the soft curl of his fingers around hers. She learned to read his cries, anticipate his needs. She found strength she hadn't known existed, deep reserves of love and fortitude that had been buried during her years with Ethan. Fiona was always there, a fierce, loving aunt who lived to make Jasper laugh. The silence in the apartment no longer felt like exile. It was serenity. The view of Sydney's Royal Botanic Garden was no longer a gilded cage. It was promise, of strolls under sun-dappled leaves, of a life she would shape with her own hands. 6 months after that day at the airport, Leona sat on the same custom Roche-Beaubois sofa where her old life had cracked wide open. She wasn't wearing couture. She wore soft, worn cashmere. Jasper slept peacefully in a bassinet nearby. On the coffee table, not party invitations or press clippings, but a business plan. A blueprint. She was founding the Bennett Foundation, a legal and financial support organization for women and children harmed by powerful men. Women who didn't have a Victoria Blackwood in their contacts list. Women who couldn't fight alone. Her phone buzzed. A news alert. Ethan Cross had sold his remaining shares in Sterling Dynamics and was reportedly relocating to Dubai, a city with no extradition treaty and a long memory for fallen kings. He was a ghost now. A cautionary tale whispered over wine glasses at Sydney rooftop parties. Leona glanced at the headline on her phone, then dismissed the notification without a second thought. Ethan was a closed chapter. Irrelevant. She turned back to her son, then to the proposal in her hands. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, washing the room in honeyed gold. For the first time in a very long time, Leona Bennett felt completely free. She had lost a husband. But she had found herself, and her rise was just beginning. 4 years later, the name Leona Bennett no longer evoked scandal, but power. Not borrowed power, not reflective power, her own earned, wielded with precision. The Bennett Foundation had become a force in Australian philanthropy, a sanctuary and a sword for women navigating the brutal crossroads of domestic abuse and financial control. Leona was no longer a society page afterthought. She was a Forbes feature, a keynote speaker, a strategist with bite. The penthouse, once her glass prison, had become her command post. Jasper, now 4, spirited, clever, and unshakably affectionate, was her son. His mother's deep hazel eyes and his father's stubborn chin, a trait she reluctantly acknowledged, gave him a fierce charm. Their life moved to a rhythm she cherished. Preschool drop-offs, afternoons in Hyde Park, and Lego-strewn nights filled with bedtime books and lullabies. He knew nothing of Maldives, of court orders, of the man who shared his DNA. To Jasper, his world was whole. It was his mom, his doting-out Fiona, and a village of love around them. Ethan Cross wasn't a ghost in their home. He wasn't even a name. And yet, in the quietest hours, when the city hushed and Jasper lay sleeping, Leona sometimes woke in a cold sweat, her breath caught in her throat. The dreams were always the same. Ethan's shadow reappearing, demanding what he abandoned. She never spoke of them. Not to Fiona, not to anyone. In daylight she was composed and commanding, but in the silence of night, a flicker of fear still stirred. Not fear of him, but fear of what he might try to reclaim, of what it might cost to defend the world she had built. One crisp spring afternoon, Leona sat in the Foundation's sleek downtown office, a space worlds away from the gleaming sterility of Sterling Dynamics. She was deep into a file. A brutal case involving a property tycoon threatening financial ruin to force custody away from his wife. A story Leona understood at a cellular level. Her assistant buzzed through. "Miss Bennett? Victoria Blackwood is on line 1. She says it's urgent." Leona's heart ticked once. Hard. Calls from Victoria were rare and never trivial. She picked up the receiver. "Victoria, what's happened?" "Leona?" Victoria's voice was calm, surgical. "He's back." Leona didn't ask who. A cold weight settled in her chest. "Back where?" "In Sydney. Landed at Mascot this morning." "His lawyers have already contacted my office. He's petitioning for visitation rights." Leona went still. For 4 years, Ethan hadn't made a single attempt to connect with Jasper. No calls, no cards, no interest. He had walked away under the terms of their agreement. Full custody to Leona, 0 visitation rights. A concession he'd agreed to without resistance, eager to disappear from the scandal. "On what grounds?" she asked, voice low and deadly calm. "The usual," Victoria replied with a sigh. "He claims he's changed, that he's rehabilitated his character, that he has a right to know his son. His legal team is framing the original agreement as something he was coerced into, signed under duress." "Duress?" Leona snapped. "He created his own inferno and then fled the flames. Let me guess, his Dubai ventures failed?" "My sources say yes," Victoria confirmed. "He burned through a lot of capital trying to launch a new tech startup. It imploded. He's not destitute, but he's nowhere near the orbit he once was. And men like Ethan, when diminished, look backward. They claw at the past for relevance." "Well, he's not getting relevance from me or my son." Leona's resolve sharpened to a blade. "Fight him, Victoria. Use everything we have." "Of course," the lawyer said evenly. "But Leona, he's going to play this out in the media. A father's desperate plea. He'll try to paint you as the cold, vengeful woman keeping a child from his repentant father. You need to be ready." Victoria's warning had come too late. By the time Leona walked through the penthouse doors that evening, the first shot had already been fired. A source close to Ethan Cross had leaked a story to a national tabloid. The headline, disgustingly predictable. Fallen tech tycoon returns to fight for the son he's never met. The article was a PR coup, filled with quotes about Ethan's profound remorse and deep, enduring love for the boy he'd only ever seen in long-lens photos. Fiona was pacing near the kitchen island, fuming, tablet in hand. "The snake's back and slithering straight into the press," she snapped, thrusting the screen toward her sister. "How dare he?" "It's a tactic, Fee," Leona said quietly, shrugging off her coat. "He's trying to bait me, force a reaction." She walked to the window, letting the glittering lights of Sydney cool her fury. The rage was there, sharp, hot, but no longer volatile. It simmered, controlled. She didn't collapse anymore. She calculated. The weeks that followed were brutal. A war of attrition fought in the courts and through media proxies. Ethan gave a carefully rehearsed interview on a primetime current affairs show, his voice thick with contrition as he spoke about his mistakes and the ache of missing his son. He looked older, gaunter. The charisma that once ruled boardrooms now tinged with desperation. He never insulted Leona directly. Instead, he painted her as wounded, understandably so. But hopeful that, in time, she'd allow him to be a father. It was strategically brilliant. The public, easily swayed, began to murmur. Was it fair to keep a child from a parent, even a flawed one? Leona, per Victoria's strict counsel, remained silent. No statements, no interviews, no rebuttals. She stayed visible only through work. She was photographed taking Jasper to Hyde Park, smiling, poised, elegant, untouched by the circus. Her silence was a message. Ethan's drama wasn't worth her voice. The first court hearing drew cameras like vultures. Photographers lined the Supreme Court steps. Ethan arrived in a somber navy suit, every inch the humbled man. Leona appeared beside Victoria, face calm, eyes fixed ahead. In the judge's chambers, the battle began. Ethan's team leaned on emotional language, a father's right to know his son. Victoria cut with steel, a father who boarded a jet to the Maldives on the eve of his son's birth, a father who never called, never wrote, a man who had met only the court's minimal obligations. Not a father, a ghost. And then Victoria played her ace, a specter from Ethan's past. "Your Honor," she said, "we would like to introduce a sworn affidavit from Ms. Alyssa Maddox." The chamber went still. Ethan's face drained of color. She currently lives in Ohio under her married name. Her statement details Mr. Cross's coercion, how she was paid post-divorce to remain silent under a non-disclosure agreement. But more importantly, Victoria continued, she recounts numerous conversations during which Mr. Cross repeatedly referred to his unborn child as a complication, a future obligation. He expressed zero interest in the child beyond the genetic obligation. The Bali trip, Alyssa stated, had been explicitly planned as a last hurrah, a final indulgence before being tied down. There had never been any intent to return in time for the birth. Victoria let the words settle like lead. The affidavit tore Ethan's narrative apart piece by piece. The image of a father filled with longing and remorse disintegrated, revealing instead a man driven by ego, regretful only because he had been exposed. The judge, a steely woman in her early 60s, read through the pages, her expression hardened by the line. She looked at Ethan, her eyes sharp, evaluative. "Mr. Cross," she said, each syllable cutting, "you abandoned your rights to this child's life 4 years ago. This sudden interest, timed with your professional decline, reads less like genuine concern and more like image management. Petition for visitation, denied. My advice is simple. Return to whatever corner of the world you've carved out for yourself, and leave this family alone." The gavel dropped. Final. Ethan sat frozen, pale, furious. His play had failed. He had underestimated her. Them all. Leona and Victoria exited the courthouse under a volley of camera flashes. Leona didn't acknowledge the reporters. No smile, no wave. She just walked, composed, silent. As their car pulled away, she caught sight of Ethan, emerging into chaos, reporters hurling questions. His eyes met hers briefly. No sorrow, no recognition, just rage. The rage of a man who had lost his throne, again, forever. That night, with Jasper tucked safely in bed, Leona poured 2 glasses of wine. She joined Fiona on the terrace overlooking Hyde Park. "To victory," Fiona said, raising her glass, "and to Alyssa Maddox, who knew she'd be our hidden ace." Leona's smile was real, tired, but real. People change, or maybe they just run out of lies. She sipped the wine, cool, clean. "He's gone for good this time. What do you think he'll do now?" Leona looked out at the glow of Sydney's skyline. Glass, steel, light. A city that had watched her collapse and her rise. "I don't know," she said. "And for the first time, I don't care." She had faced the ghost. She had stood firm. She had protected her son and reclaimed her peace. Ethan Cross was finally gone, his presence reduced to a flicker, fading fast. What remained was hers. The hum of the Bennett Foundation, the soft laughter from Jasper's room, and the steady, sure rhythm of her own heart. She had climbed, she had survived, she was home. So that's how it ends, friends. Leona's journey comes full circle, not in spectacle, but in stillness. If you're still here, right now, at this moment, then something in this story touched your heart, didn't it? Maybe it was the quiet strength of a woman who refused to crumble, or the image of a mother choosing love over revenge, integrity over rage. Or maybe, like so many of us, you've carried your own version of betrayal, silence, or sacrifice. And now let's pause together and look at this story, not just as drama, but as reflection. Leona didn't just win, she healed. Not in the loud, triumphant way we're taught to seek, but in the quieter, harder way. By facing herself, facing her fears, and walking forward anyway. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. And that's what Leona did. When the world collapsed around her, when the lies cut the deepest, she remembered who she was. She protected her child, built something greater than revenge, a legacy, a life crafted with purpose. She didn't need to destroy Ethan to find peace. She just needed to choose herself. So wherever you are right now, in healing, in heartbreak, in rebuilding, I hope you carry this with you. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become. And maybe tonight, you'll sleep a little stronger. If this story stayed with you, if it stirred something deep, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who might need it. And if you're new here, join our community by subscribing. We tell stories that don't just entertain. They remember you. They see you. Until next time, thank you for being here. You matter. And you're never alone.